Namaskar and welcome to Dialogus. You're watching Worldview with me, Vishal Dahiya. Today we're going to talk about a very important geopolitical scenario. Now, India's Operation Sindoor, aimed against terror infrastructure in Pakistan, has brought in focus some very interesting aspects of geopolitics and the diplomatic maneuvers of several countries, including the USA, China, Azerbaijan, and Turkey. Today, we're going to focus on Turkey, a country with which India stood in solidarity not too long ago by sending immediate humanitarian aid in the aftermath of a massive earthquake. Turkey, however, was the first to condemn India's targeted airstrikes against terror launchpads in Pakistan on 7th of May. After the dastardly terror attack in Pahalgam on 22nd of April and in the run-up to India's Operation Sindoor, Turkey also sent few of its C-130 transport aircraft, reportedly carrying drones, weapons and ammunitions. Turkey's naval ships also docked at Karachi port for a goodwill visit. Now, this pro-Pakistan stand by Turkey has angered the Indian public, leading to a boycott sentiment amongst the general population, with a massive surge in cancellation of tours to various parts of Turkey and avoiding Turkish goods and vendors as well. Several educational institutions have also suspended cooperation with their Turkish counterparts, and trade bodies have also cancelled delegations. Indian government is also trying to work out its own strategy on this front. So what are the reasons behind Turkey's strong pro-Pakistan stand, even in the face of overwhelming evidence of their support for terrorism? And has Turkish President Erdogan gone too far this time? How will this impact the India-Turkey relations in the long term and overall geopolitical scenario in the region? For a detailed discussion on these aspects and much more, we have with us today two distinguished experts, former Ambassador Prabhu Dayal and strategic analyst retired Major General Jagatbir Singh, who is also a distinguished fellow with USI. Welcome, both of you gentlemen, to Worldview. Let me begin with you, Ambassador Dayal, and let me start by asking bluntly the direct question. Is it a very, very tough time ahead for India-Turkey relations, because Turkey seemingly has made it clear as to on whose side it stands when it comes between India and Pakistan?
Well, Vishal, first of all, thanks for having me on your show. You know, as you mentioned, the Turkish President Erdogan has expressed solidarity with Pakistan, but he has done this consistently. You know, his view is extremely colored by an Islamic perception. And Pakistan has repeatedly sought to get Turkish support to raise the Kashmir issue on international platforms like the UN General Assembly. Now, as you yourself said, despite this, India initiated a relief operation named Operation Dost, which was in fact a search and rescue mission, and we sent $850,000 worth of relief material to Turkey. Now, in the Turkish language, the word arkadaş is commonly used to refer to a friend. But a dost is a friend who is like a family. In Turkish, a dost is someone you can rely on in difficult times and with whom you share a deep connection. So this was the gesture which India made to Turkey when Turkey was going through a very difficult time. The earthquake was devastating. But far from being grateful to India for the timely help that we had given, Turkey's subsequent actions have only increased the security threats we face from Pakistan. Now, tensions with Turkey have escalated after it condemned Operation Sindoor, which India had launched in response to the terror attack in Pahalgam. Turkey, and its close ally, Azerbaijan, stood steadfast in supporting Pakistan amid the conflict with India. And Ankara's criticism of Operation Sindoor only deepened the diplomatic divide with India. And further worsening the situation, Turkey supplied drones to Pakistan while the conflict was going on. after Operation Sindoor. And these were used to target Indian civilian areas and military sites during the conflict. Of course, we destroyed almost all of them. But nonetheless, the fact is that Turkey had given these drones to Pakistan to be used against India. So, as you mentioned, in response to Turkey's alignment with Pakistan, a nationwide boycott movement has taken hold in India, targeting Turkish goods, services, and collaborations across multiple sectors. And undoubtedly, the boycott will deprive Turkey of desperately needed foreign exchange and trade with one of the world's biggest economies and strain its diplomatic ties with India.
Okay, so we seemingly have used, Indian public has seemingly used a leaf out of US President Donald Trump's international policy, using trade as a retaliatory weapon out here against Turkey. Trade includes both goods, services, and other areas of cooperation as well. General Singh, your views, sir, on this aspect and very important aspect of the fallout of Operation Sindoor, that several countries have been identified, be it Azerbaijan, China we have always known, Turkey also, their pro-Pakistan stand is pretty well known. They have also tried to fish in troubled waters by raising Jammu and Kashmir issue as also, and then perhaps siding with Pakistan on that as well. But do you believe that Erdogan seems to have gone a bit far this time around?
Well, thank you very much, Vishal, for having me on your panel. And thank you, Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, for your wonderful insights into this issue of Turkey. Now, I've got two, 3 points which I'd like to make. And some have been already touched by the Ambassador. But India's concern, like you've rightly brought out, is that while Turkey criticized our military response to Pakistan's terror attack, he called it provocative steps and also said it risks an all out war. It also, we haven't, it made no reference whatsoever to the Pahalgam attack. So, I mean, just look at the way they chose their words, look at the things they said, and look, it is, not only rhetoric, but the strategic and operational manner in which they played out. And the ambassador has also brought out, the support they gave as far as the drones are concerned. And what you witnessed is you witnessed some actions taking place before the terror attack, you witnessed some actions during the terror attack, and you witnessed something after the terror attack. So I'll go over all these three things together. Now, absolutely, for many years now, Pakistan and the Turkish ties have been getting closer together. In fact, Turkey was one of the first countries to recognize Pakistan after its independence. And the Khilafat movement, even though it originated in India, Pakistan celebrated 200 years of, the of 100 years of the Khilafat movement anniversary in 2020. And that was to get back the Ottoman rule post, the British redrawing the maps of West Asia and Middle East. But apart from that, Pakistan and Turkey have had great, amount of military exchanges over the years, which one has been mentioned, is the drones. But apart from that, the T-129 ATAC Hepters, Pakistan has ordered 30 of them. Right now, they've not been delivered because of US export restrictions. The Bakhtiar drones are there, the Raftar drones, that was done in 2021. The Anka S male drones joint production is there. They've also gone in for, joint production of, this getting stealth frigates, the corvettes under the Milgem class. Two were to be built in Turkey, two in Karachi. Songa drones were used during the recent standoff, the conflict in Op Sindoor. The STM defense of Turkey upgrades Pakistan submarines. There was a 17,000 ton, fleet tanker built in collaboration with STM. Pakistan got 34 T-37 aircraft, their trainer aircraft like a Cessna. They've been training of military officers over there. You know that President Musharraf had very close ties with Turkey. They are the second biggest arms supplier to Pakistan after China. And like you said, 27th April, a C-130 lands there. Coincidence may not be. Carrying drones, expected. Also, at that time, there was a, you know, Yika drone, there was a one of their ships also landed there. So, docked there. So, that is there. On 30th April, Lieutenant General Yasir Kodigulu visits Pakistan. Now, all these are not coincidences. You connect the dots. The Ada class ship I talked about. There are also rumors that apart from using Pakistan, the Turkish drones, there are also rumors regarding the Turkish operators. Now that is unverified, but those are there and it is very serious. And now immediately after the conflict, during the conflict, you've seen the rhetoric, and immediately after the conflict, what do you see? The Pakistan president, along with the newly promoted after a 88-hour war field marshal and the foreign minister visits Iran, Turkey, and Azerbaijan. And in each place, they are, support for Pakistan's stance and also uh, things to, criticize India and want to resolve the Kashmir conflict. So, I mean, these are things that are playing out there. We know exactly where we stand as far as they go. And earlier, Turkey had even opposed India in the NSG. So they are wanting to expand. And I
Okay.
think they've been recently buoyed by their success in Syria, where they've seen a pro-Turkish, person being installed there. So, I mean, they've been a large number of things, but Turkey has been working on this domain for a large time to expand its influence in the region. And
Okay.
they've stepped in, even their think tanks are, talking this language. And one of the think tanks even showed a map of Greater Bangladesh, which shows parts of India. So, I mean, this is the extent to which they're going.
Okay, okay. Ambassador Dal, as General Singh is pointing out, the uniformity of statements and action taken by the Turkish government in the Operation Sindoor period, during the Operation Sindoor, and the post-Operation Sindoor period as well. Also, the fact that Turkey seemingly is looking at Pakistan as a market to sell its weapons. That might be another reason. One more, maybe, Assad moving out of Syria and a pro-Turkey person taking over as the acting president in Syria. Very, significant for Turkey because they've been embroiled in the Syrian theater for quite some time now. Are these the only reasons for Turkey to take a stand against India, or which is not in interest of India, or is there something else also brewing behind the scenes?
If Turkey hopes to sell a large quantity of weapons to Pakistan or Syria, then he's barking up the wrong tree because both these countries are economically in shambles because of the long civil war in Syria and because of Pakistan's mismanagement for such a long time and the diversion of financial resources for terrorism. We all know that the Pakistan army calls the shots and it diverts all the resources of the country towards what it feels are its objectives, and that is to target India through terror groups. It funds, arms, trains, and sends these terrorists across to India. Now, the question is, what should we do? And I think in response to Turkey's alignment with Pakistan, the nationwide boycott movement, which has taken hold in India, is absolutely the right thing because it is important to send a message across to Turkey that we will boycott goods, services which come from that country and any sort of collaborations in any sector. Now, let me mention that India has taken very decisive action. India has cancelled the $2.3 billion contract with Turkey's Andalus shipyard. And that was for consultancy on the construction of 5 support ships for the Indian Navy. And again, several Turkish firms operating in India are being systematically replaced by domestic or alternative international partners. Now, India has revoked the security clearance of the Turkish firm Celebi Aviation, which provided ground handling services at major Indian airports, including Delhi, Mumbai and Chennai. So government has taken very decisive action. And alongside that, several other institutions have also joined. Several Indian universities, including JNU, Jamia Millia, Islamia, Maulana Azad, National Urdu University, all these have suspended academic partnerships and MOUs with Turkish institutions. And very importantly, uh, the All India Products Distribution Federation, which represents millions of shopkeepers, has announced an indefinite boycott of Turkish food products, which is going to impact at least 2,000 crore worth of imports from Turkey. And as you
Okay.
mentioned, Indian travelers are boycotting. Indian travelers were going in very large numbers to Turkey and to Azerbaijan. But in response to Turkey's alignment with Pakistan, now a nationwide boycott has taken hold of any sort of touristic ventures in Turkey. Indian travelers are reportedly cancelling trips to Turkey. And
Mm-hmm.
Indian travel companies have also joined hands and they have paused bookings or suspended travel packages to Turkey. And these are big companies like Make My Trip or Ease My Trip and Cox and Kings. These are all suspended travel bookings. So the message is going across very clearly. Turkey, if you continue to align with Pakistan the way you are doing, then we Indians as a nation will boycott you and we will sever all sorts of links with you.
Okay, okay. General Singh, Ambassador Dayal has listed out a number of steps which have been taken by the general public, the institutions, and the government as well. My question is, as a strategic analyst, do you believe this is enough to send a message across to Turkey, and will it have an impact? Will it force Turkey to change track and not stand with Pakistan specifically when we are talking about the terror activity emanating from Pakistani soil?
Well, you raised a very interesting question, and I'd like to just say that, Turkey's choice for siding with Pakistan cannot be without consequences. So you can't just take it, lying down and do nothing. So you have to, counter this in multiple manners. And some of these manners, some of these decisions have already been spelled out by the government of India. Some have been taken. Some have also come out due to popular, support within India of the people who also decided not to go to visit Turkey. That tourism will be affected, as well as shops, not wanting to sell Turkish goods. So, I mean, that's something that you see. But on the larger context, you have to convey both strategic costs and economic costs for Turkey for
Mm-hmm.
prioritizing with Pakistan. I think that's so. How do you get about it? You also have to, do other things. So apart from these things which have been done, and another issue which was not touched upon is that Turkey also has a large number of people who are attending religious institutions in Turkey, plus they're supporting certain, uh, scholarships and people in India, and that is under their Diyanet, or they call the state's Directorate of Religious Affairs, and these scholarships are given to people. And there
Mm-hmm.
are 8 such Diyanet-linked cultural centers operating in India. Now, these have also, fostered close ties with that. So, I mean, we've taken uh, cognizance of that, but we also have to strengthen, our ties with the other countries so that we counter Turkey in this way. So one thing was that, you have closer ties with Armenia. Armenia and Azerbaijan are one against the other. There was a genocide in Armenia by the Turks, which the Turks don't recognize as such. Then you recognize Cyprus, you claim theirs, but they also have a conflict with Turkey, and then you side with Greece. So, I mean, these are three. Apart from that, if you look at it, it's a very interesting map, which is being reframed, so to say. And that is, if you look at the West Asia, so to say, in the center, you have the Arabs who were
Mm-hmm.
literally in control of the region, the Sunni Arabs of Saudi Arabia, and one side to the west you have the Ottomans who were in decline. Now Erdogan wants to see the reversal of the Ottoman Empire. And the other side you have the Persians to the east, which are Iran. And now Pakistan is bordering Iran. Pakistan is bordering the Central Asian Republic. So, I mean, and they are having closer ties with Pakistan. Turkey is having closer ties with Pakistan and wanting to reach out to Iran. So, this is something. So, we need to strengthen our ties with the Arab countries, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, as also Indonesia, something like that. Also, like I mentioned, for us, our Atmanirbhar Bharat, the defense, capabilities, which I mean, we have to build on that. So we have to keep
Indeed.
strengthening that. And next thing is that in our region, we should not let Turkey meddle. So we have to strengthen our regional cooperation also. So I mean, that's something that we need to do. We cannot have, weaknesses around us so that Turkey and other powers want to, influence India by getting into those countries. So that's something we need to say. And like has been brought out, India was amongst the first responders when the earthquake hit. Their Operation Dost is well documented. The field ambulance from the para brigade moved there, and what they did was something remarkable. But yet
Hmm.
there's no, what can I say, gratitude toward what India did. And they've been consistent in their stand, and initially also, if you look back, Turkey was part of NATO. Pakistan and Turkey were both part of CENTO. So we were on little opposite sides. They were not part of the non-aligned movement. So even if you go back in time. And the other thing is that I'd like to say that today the Turkish inflation is 38%. So if you're talking of
That's a,
goods, being exported and imported from there, these problems occur. They
indeed.
will be hit more badly compared to our
That's
inflation, which
that's
is
that's
much lower. Yeah. So
that's a huge figure, and the economic cost
Pakistan
is.
and Turkey want to aim to reach a $5 billion trade. We are already at 11.5 billion with them. So that's something, but a large amount of marble, apple, other goods come from Turkey. So there's something that is there.
So it looks like Turkey is missing the woods for the trees out there, but it is for them to take a call on that. Ambassador Dayal, overall geopolitical scenario, as General Singh is also referring to, how do you see things changing from here, things developing from here? Because, China, Azerbaijan, and Turkey supporting Pakistan and very openly supporting Pakistan. Then, of course, in our neighborhood, in Bangladesh, there is still turmoil. When we are looking at the larger West Asia, Syria, seemingly a lot of things have changed. United States seemingly have a very renewed interest out there. Russia is stuck in its own backyard and in the Russo-Ukrainian war. And when you look at the overall picture, there also emerges very important aspect that Turkey also seemingly has not been feeling very comfortable in the NATO alliance.
It's true. In fact, the European countries are taking extremely hardline positions in regard to Turkey. And one reason for that, obviously, is that Turkey is making everybody around it very uncomfortable. Turkish policies are making more enemies than friends. Now, as regards Turkey's relations with India, I don't see them improving anytime in the near future. In fact, we will have to contend with hostile Turkey for some time to come, as also other hostile countries which are immediately in our neighborhood. You mentioned China. It is going to continue to be hostile for a variety of reasons. And of course, that would require a separate session. And Pakistan, along with Bangladesh, so our eastern, northern, and western flanks will all be causes of worry. So the geopolitical issues which have been bedeviling us for quite some time will continue to do so. Now, as regards the United States, I don't know whether it is a very reliable friend because several policies of President Trump have made us wonder what is the rationale for them. When he says that India is a very close friend, and when he welcomed Prime Minister Modi saying that he is a great friend of his, and then he takes resort to tariffs and other sorts of measures and tries to hyphenate Pakistan and India, then one begins to wonder What
and
really
and
has become policy?
tries to claim credit using trade as a bargaining chip for the ceasefire.
Yes, he tried to take credit for bringing about the ceasefire. And of course, India put to naught all those claims by pointing out that the only reason we agreed to the ceasefire is because the Pakistanis were on their knees and they asked for it, not because President Trump interfered or intervened and brought about a ceasefire. So the point is, our neighborhood is going to be extremely challenging, and the global scenario will also be not too friendly in the foreseeable future. But, and this is a fundamental but, India has shown that it can meet challenges and overcome them on its own. India has the capacity, India has the drive, and India has the initiative to counter challenges, as it has shown in the recent happenings in the relationship with Pakistan. Operation Sindoor, the manner it was conceived, launched, and executed, showed that India relies on itself to meet the challenges. So, regardless of what the geopolitical challenges are, I think we have the capacity to deal with them.
Okay, okay. Last question, General Singh, and it flows from what you had detailed in your previous answer. Is Erdogan, the president of Turkey, trying to position himself as the statesman of the world? That's one, and two, specifically starting from the West Asia and the region around Turkey, and two, as you're pointing out, restore the long lost Ottoman glory of Turkish old days, because this emanates from the fact that the kind of diplomatic and strategic maneuvers Turkey has been doing for the past 1 decade, which is now culminated into ironclad support for Pakistan, and that too in the face of overwhelming evidence of Pakistan's support for terrorism. So it's like indirect support for terror.
Absolutely, there's no doubt about it that it shows indirect support for terrorism. That is the irony of the whole thing. And at one stage, they are talking about terror which is emanating from the Kurds area, the PKK. They recently had something, a sort of, reconciliation within that for ceasefire. And but of course, Turkey never honored their part. Now, one thing the ambassador said, I'd like to, and which you raised, is that, regarding Turkey's place in NATO. So you've seen Turkey has been an integral member of NATO, yet within NATO, Turkey's had problems with Cyprus, Turkey's having problems with Greece, and today there's Turkey's in Syria. But as I've said in one of the articles I've written, the next problem in Syria is going to be between Israel and Turkey in Syria. So that's also something. So whose side will the US take? So this is a very complicated, so to say, area, and it's always remained like that. And also, Turkey feels that they've not been given their due within NATO. Now, when you talk of the so-called S-400 missile, which we saw being used in India, Turkey feared that Katsa sanctions would be imposed upon it when it took that from Russia. So that's one thing you see. Turkey is not even part of the F-35 program. So they feel that they are sidelined within NATO to a degree. You also seen Turkey's role where they've actually balanced both sides between Russia and Ukraine in the current conflict. So that's something you must give Erdogan credit for. But the problem is that Erdogan is going to come up with an election very soon, 2028. The mayor of Istanbul was a hugely popular person. Nobody knows what's going to happen over there. But yes, Turkey does want feels that now the time is right to come back to, establishing itself and what it had under the Ottoman Empire. Of course, it can't get that area back, so to say, but it wants to exert greater influence. And now it feels its influence is also in the Eurasian region. So, they talk of Turkic speaking countries, Turkic things, whether it's Turkey, Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, I mean, places like this. So they talk of that also. So it's these are things that are coming about. It's very
Okay.
interesting. But as the ambassador very rightly pointed out, India can and meet challenges on its own. We have our ability, we have our strengths, and I think we need to build on our strengths and our capabilities. And it has been wonderfully demonstrated during the recent standoff, this conflict during Op Sindoor, that our absolute operational freedom was given to the armed forces, and they delivered in a manner that was expected from them.
Indeed.
And that's something that we need to portray and showcase to the world.
Indeed, indeed, and it's a very complicated situation. Relationships between the countries within a particular region, with countries from other region as well, in the neighborhoods also, and that sometimes lead to more complexities arising in conflict situations, in peacetime situations as well, in battling with important issues. And troubles like terrorism. Thank you so much, gentlemen, Ambassador Prabhu Dayal and Major General Jagatbir Singh as well, for joining us and sharing those valuable insights and inputs on India's Turkey problem and specifically how to deal with it. We'll come back again next week with a different topic and try and analyze various aspects of that also. Till then, keep watching Worldview and Dialogus. Thank you.